It was one of America's 13 original states and played a big role in the birth of the nation. It's a place where fields give way to vast forests of pine. Morning mist lingers on a seemingly prehistoric land, and where wild sunlit beaches stretch on for miles. This is the unexpected world of New Jersey. It may be known for its highways, tunnels, and famous locations on The Sopranos, but there's much more to the Garden State than this, especially when seen from the air. It was here where a raging waterfall powered America's first industrial city, where some of Hollywood's biggest movie studios got their start. And it was a New Jersey truck driver who came up with the big idea to use steel boxes to move cargo around the world, making him a fortune and transforming global trade. But people in New Jersey have also experienced their share of hard times. It's here that the legendary airship, the Hindenburg, met its fiery fate, where a city of bright lights has ridden great cycles of boom and bust, and a raging superstorm forced millions to flee their homes and then turned those homes into tinder. It may take years for this coastal state to recover, but the people of New Jersey have always bounced back, including one woman who turned her own personal tragedy into a victory for all the women who fought in America's Revolutionary War, and a New Jersey musician known as the Boss, who pitched in to raise millions for those who suffered nature's wrath. It's been one of the most diverse states in the nation from the day it was founded, and a driving force of the American economy ever since explorers first set eyes on its shores. This is the surprising land of New Jersey. One of the biggest surprises in New Jersey might be this one, the Statue of Liberty. She's usually considered a New York landmark, and officially she is, but many think of her as something of a Jersey girl. That's because the island she stands on actually lies inside New Jersey's state boundaries, not New York's. And that's the case for historic Ellis Island, too. About 90% of Ellis Island belongs to New Jersey, the rest to New York. Starting in 1892, this dock was the last stop for ships bringing hopeful immigrants to America from Europe and around the world. They entered Ellis Island's famous immigration center, eager to learn if they would be admitted into the United States or be forced to sail more than 3,000 miles back across the Atlantic. Over 12 million men, women, and children were ultimately processed here. Many headed to New York City, but about 2/3 hopped on ferries and headed the other way, to New Jersey. They set foot on the U.S. mainland for the first time here, under the clock tower of the Jersey Terminal, home of the former Central Railroad of New Jersey. The first train rolled out of this station in 1889. It was later expanded, with 20 tracks covering more than 300,000 square feet, making it the largest train shed of its kind ever built. By 1900, up to 300 trains and 50,000 passengers passed through this station every day. Many of these were immigrants from Ellis Island, heading out to start new lives across the nation. But in the 1930s, that began to change. Over the years, with the Great Depression, World War II, and the growing popularity of the automobile, fewer and fewer passengers used the station. In 1967, the Central Railroad of New Jersey was forced to go bankrupt. huge terminal and train sheds stand largely empty, which is surprising considering that the site, with stunning views of Manhattan, is one of the most spectacular pieces of real estate in the world. But the reason that there are cars here today is because this is also the site of the Empty Sky Memorial. These reflective twin walls represent the Twin Towers of the World Trade Center and point toward Ground Zero, where the towers fell. On the memorial's walls are etched the names of the 749 New Jersey residents who lost their lives in the terrorist attacks of 9/11. It was named The Empty Sky after the Bruce Springsteen song of the same name, which he wrote to honor those who perished on that tragic day just across the river. This site once bustled with hopeful immigrants with their eyes on the future. Today, it's a quiet place of reflection and a perfect spot to set eyes on the Freedom Tower, the shimmering skyscraper of angled glass and steel that now rises at Ground Zero and is now the tallest building in the United States. Over the centuries, people in New Jersey have witnessed great change along their shores. And one of the biggest changes was brought about by these. The thousands of cargo containers that are offloaded every day here at the Port Newark Elizabeth Marine Terminal. They are the heart of today's global economy and something called containerized shipping. It's a standardized system of ships, containers, trucks, and trains that allow the products we use every day to be moved with amazing speed from the factories where they're produced to consumers all over the globe. And it all started right here on these very docks, thanks to an innovative New Jersey trucking executive named Malcolm McLean. One day, McLean was watching cotton bales from his trucks being loaded piecemeal onto ships. It suddenly struck him that it would be quicker to just load the truck's trailers directly onto the ship's decks instead of unloading and then reloading the cotton. 19 years later, in 1956, he launched the world's first containerized ship from this New Jersey dock. Today, our global economy couldn't survive without containerized shipping. Once these steel boxes arrive here by truck, they're picked up by machines called straddle carriers that rely on GPS to get each one to where it needs to go. Dozens of these carriers race around the port, picking up and dropping off individual containers so they can be loaded on the right ship at the right time. It's an amazing industrial ballet and the living legacy of one New Jersey businessman whose vision for the future transformed global trade. In order to offload their cargo at Elizabeth Terminal, container ships first have to sail up a tidal strait known as the Kilvan Cull, and then pass underneath the Bayonne Bridge, which links New York's Staten Island with Bayonne, New Jersey. This bridge, which provides a vital link between the two states, opened to traffic in 1931. It's been famous for its elegant 1,675-foot-long steel arch ever since. But the bridge is now too low for the next generation of the world's new mega ships. When it was designed, its roadway was placed 150 feet above the water, which was plenty of space for the tallest vessels of the day back in the 1930s. But today's container ships, like this one, the Yangming Milestone, are already having trouble squeezing under its span. If the milestone collides with the bridge, it could send the traffic plunging into the water below. Today, the milestone barely makes it under the span. But if this were one of the new, larger post-Panamax ships, it could rip the Bayonne Bridge right in two. That's why the port plans on raising the bridge's roadway by 64 feet, and it's hoping to do it while keeping it open to traffic the entire time. Today, ships are bringing big change to New Jersey. But actually, that's nothing new. More than 400 years ago, another much smaller vessel made its way up these waters and set in motion the transformation of this once wild shoreline into the New Jersey we know today. On On September 3rd, 1609, a three-masted wooden sailing ship called the Half Moon sailed up these waters between what's now New York and New Jersey. Its captain, Henry Hudson, had been sent by the Dutch East India Company to find a northwest passage to the Pacific Ocean. At the time, the New Jersey waterfront was still wild. There was nothing but trees, water, and beaches, likely dotted with the canoes of New Jersey's native tribes. Smoke rising from their cooking fires may have been the only sight on the horizon. Hudson would be awed if he returned today, especially if he set eyes on this: the George Washington Bridge, which leaps from Fort Lee, New Jersey, across the river that now bears Hudson's name. Today, a group of dedicated volunteers sails a replica of the Half Moon up and down the Hudson, using it as a floating museum to keep the spirit of those early days of discovery alive. Hudson reported that the area held riches in fur. And in 1621, the Dutch laid claim to all the land that lay between the 42nd and the 38th parallels, an area that extends from what's now Cape Cod to Cape Henlopen in northern Delaware. They called their new colony New Netherland. But in 1664, just over 40 years later, the British wrestled New Netherland away from the Dutch and soon carved out New Jersey as one of its American colonies. At the time, much of the land that's now New Jersey was covered by dense forest. And, amazingly, more than 3 centuries later, it still is today. Here, fields give way to a blanket of trees that stretches on for miles. It's a place known as the New Jersey Pinelands. Locals call it the Pine Barrens. In 1978, this area was designated the nation's first national reserve and covers 22% of the entire state. It's the largest piece of preserved open space on the eastern seaboard between Richmond, Virginia, and Boston, Massachusetts. In the 18th century, trees from the pinelands were used to build whaling ships and to make pitch, tar, and turpentine to protect those ships' hulls out on the open sea. But soon, settlers also discovered riches in the swamps around the trees. Over time, water flowing under this forest left behind deposits of iron ore. In 1766, an investor named Charles Reed began extracting that ore from the forest's bogs and used the power of local streams to build a new ironworks, which he named Batstow. Today, some of this region's once valuable iron ore still lies here in piles for all to see. Reed's iron furnaces were used to make some of the cannons and cannonballs that helped America win its Revolutionary War. As his ironworks prospered, a thriving village with orderly rows of houses grew up around it. Batstow would eventually have a general store, an ice house, and a church. Generations of ironmasters ruled over the site from this house that dwarfs every other structure in town. But the good times here began to fade away with the discovery of new sources of iron in Pennsylvania. The ironworks at Batstow finally shut down in the 1860s. By then, New Jersey was already on its way to being an important center of innovation and industry. In 1791, just 15 years after the signing of the Declaration of Independence, Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton set out to search for a site to establish a new industrial city to help put the new nation's economy firmly on its own 2 feet. He found the perfect spot in northern New Jersey. Today, the rushing waters of Great Falls plunge 77 feet before continuing on through the Passaic River Gorge above the town of Patterson. Hamilton knew that these falls could power all kinds of new industries. So, he commissioned canals and raceways to harness the rushing water. It was a highly controversial project at the time. Many others in the government, including George Washington himself, thought that agriculture, not industry, would be the driving force of America's economy and growth. But Hamilton had other ideas. He knew of the Industrial Revolution that was transforming England and wanted to create the same boom here in the United States. Soon, Paterson, New Jersey, America's first planned industrial city, was rising below Great Falls. It was quickly bustling with a wide range of innovative companies, including New Jersey's first water-powered cotton mill and the first factory in the world to turn out a continuous roll of paper. It was here that the maker of the famous Colt revolver set up shop. Nearby, Rogers Locomotive Company built thousands of steam engines for the trains that would soon be crisscrossing America. Later on, Paterson became a center of silk production, which earned it the nickname Silk City. Today, Paterson's former industrial district, including its famous waterfall, is preserved as the Paterson Great Falls National Historical Park. In the 19th century, New Jersey was home to inventors of all kinds, a legacy that continues today. There are now more scientists and engineers per square mile in New Jersey than any other state in the nation. But the most famous innovator in New Jersey history has been Thomas Edison. It was here that he and his research team developed the first successful incandescent light bulb and a working phonograph, the first device ever to record and play back the sound of a human voice. And then, in 1889, at his laboratory, which still stands here in West Orange, he and his team created the world's first movie camera, which he called a kinetograph. He built a small structure in which he could make films, the first movie studio in the world. It was known as the Black Maria and was basically just one room. A replica now stands here at the Thomas Edison National Historical Park. Inside, Edison had actors perform in front of his kinetograph and opened the roof to let light in. Soon, others were experimenting with Edison's movie cameras, and they turned the New Jersey town of Fort Lee into the birthplace of the American film industry. Today, Fort Lee is better known for a recent political scandal known as Bridgegate. But once, this town, perched on the Hudson at the end of the George Washington Bridge, was America's film town. 2 decades before Hollywood even existed, Fort Lee's streets bustled with producers, directors, actors, and crew. This simple single-story white building was once the headquarters of the Champion Film Company. Built in 1909 as one of the first movie production studios in the country. It was also in Fort Lee that Universal Studios got its start, along with Fox. The big studios ultimately left Fort Lee for Hollywood, but New Jersey has continued to play a major role on the big screen. Susan Sarandon, John Travolta, Kevin Spacey, Meryl Streep, and Bruce Willis all hail from the Garden State. But no New Jersey-born actor has managed to put his home state on the map like James Gandolfini, aka mobster Tony Soprano, who conducted business at a gritty fictional strip club next to Interstate 80 called the Bada Bing. In real life, the club's name is the Satin Dolls. Gandolfini died in June 2013. Fans of the show were so heartbroken, they left notes and candles at this sprawling suburban house in North Caldwell, where much of The Sopranos was filmed, even though Gandolfini never actually lived there himself. But it's not just Sopranos fans who are lured to northern New Jersey. So too are many who work in the urban canyons of Manhattan, but choose to call this quiet corner of the Garden State home. The daily commute from New York City out here to the peaceful town of Oakland can take just 1 hour. New Jersey may be the most densely populated state in the nation, but it's still possible to carve out an existence here right on the edge of the wilderness, where Dutch settlers once did more than 3 centuries ago. And beyond these houses, lakes can appear suddenly out of the trees. And travelers can journey back to a time when this corner of the state was the territory of New Jersey's original Lenape tribe, which had lived on these lands for centuries. One of these watery worlds is the Delaware Water Gap National Recreation Area, a 70,000-acre natural treasure that straddles the New Jersey-Pennsylvania border. Over millions of years, water from the Delaware River carved a channel through the Appalachians, creating the Delaware Water Gap. It was once considered a wonder of the world, and thousands flocked here from Philadelphia and New York City to set eyes on a place where water had proven itself to be more powerful than a mountain. Today, hidden in the mist, the Delaware River flows quietly south toward the city of Trenton. But on one cold winter night in 1776, these waters were anything but quiet, when George Washington made his famous crossing of the Delaware as he prepared to take the city of Trenton back from the British. It was Christmas Day, 1776, during the American Revolutionary War. George Washington and an army of 2,400 were on the Pennsylvania side of the Delaware River. They needed to reach Trenton on the New Jersey side, which was then in the grip of German mercenaries working for the British. Washington's army attempted to cross the river here, but there was no bridge at the time. Today, crossing the Delaware is a breeze, even if you decide to skip the bridge and just float from bank to bank. But on that winter night, this quiet river was clogged with ice. A freezing gale blew its surface into choppy waves, and local ferries began slowly crisscrossing the river, carrying men and supplies. The troops feared they could be knocked overboard or dragged under the ice at any time. But they all finally made it and stepped out of their boats onto the New Jersey shore. It's believed that Washington gathered his officers at this nearby house owned by the ferry operator so they could plan their strike on Trenton. In the freezing pre-dawn hours of December 26th, after staying up all night, Washington and his troops marched to Trenton in order to surprise the German mercenaries who still had control of the city. Legend has it that they were still in their bunks in these barracks, recovering from their Christmas revelries the night before, when the Americans came knocking. By the time the battle ended, the Revolutionary Army had captured 900 of the mercenaries. All of Washington's men survived. To celebrate the victory of the now famous Battle of Trenton, a monument stands on the hill where Washington placed his artillery. Architect John Duncan designed its granite base and 150-foot-high Doric column. Sculptor William O'Donovan created the bronze statue of Washington on its peak. He is shown directing the troops to fire in a battle that is now considered an early turning point in the war. But while Washington was the most celebrated hero of America's Revolutionary War, there were many others, and one of the most legendary was a woman who earned her fame just 25 miles northeast of Trenton on these fields in the New Jersey county of Monmouth in 1778. At the time, British General Henry Clinton and 10,000 regulars in the British Army were staging a retreat from Philadelphia to New York. So, 5,000 American Revolutionary soldiers arrived here to try and cut them off. On June 28th, a bloody battle followed, with hundreds of casualties on both sides. That night, Clinton and his forces snuck away in the cover of darkness, leaving both sides to claim victory. But the day will always be best remembered for the legendary actions of an ordinary farm wife. She's said to have braved the battle's front lines to bring pitchers of water to the thirsty rebel fighters, which earned her the nickname Molly Pitcher. And when her own husband perished on the battlefield, she joined in and helped fire the cannons. Her story is highlighted in a new visitor center on the site. No one actually knows Molly Pitcher's real name or whether she was even a real person, but she remains an American hero to this day, embodying the daring contributions that women made to America's Revolutionary War. By 1783, the war was over, and just 4 years later, on December 18, 1787, New Jersey became the third of the former 13 colonies to ratify America's new Constitution. And soon, a new Capitol building was rising here in Trenton on the banks of the Delaware and opened its doors in 1792. It gives New Jersey bragging rights to what is today the second oldest seat of government in the U.S. Much of the building was actually rebuilt after an 1885 fire. Architect Louis Broom oversaw the reconstruction. He also designed the gilded dome that's been the Capitol's shining centerpiece since it was completed in 1912. When its shine began to fade in the 1990s, kids in New Jersey chipped in with a Dimes for the Dome campaign that helped raise funds for the 48,000 squares of gold leaf needed to bring it back. Today, New Jersey State House shimmers again. But its glow here in Trenton is nothing compared to this nightly spectacle. In a colorful city with an even more colorful past. When the sun goes down over Atlantic City, its casinos come alive. As another night of gambling and glitz gets underway. The epicenter of the action is here, along the city's famous boardwalk. Caesars and Bally's were the first to arrive here in 1979. The Tropicana showed up in 1981, followed by Trump Plaza, starting in 1984. A new casino resort called Revel opened in 2012. Every night, the rival towers pull out all the stops to grab the attention and the cash of the tourists down below. But recently, despite the bright lights, things here aren't as rosy as they might seem. Casino owners pulled in nearly $3 billion in revenue in 2013, but that was the lowest number in 25 years. Revel, which cost almost $2.5 billion to build, went bankrupt within a year after it opened. Trump Plaza, which was built for about $210 million in 1984, almost sold for just $20 million. But for some, that's not really much of a surprise. Making a go of it in Atlantic City has been tough from the very start. In the 1850s, a doctor named Jonathan Pitney and a civil engineer named Richard Osborne dreamed of building a resort here on what was then a wild strip of sand called Absecon Island. But its remote location made their vision a hard sell. So they convinced New Jersey authorities to approve a charter to build a railroad from the mainland to their island. When the first train arrived in 1854, Atlantic City's first boom began. New streets were laid out for the town. Those that ran parallel to the shore were given the names of seas around the world, including the Baltic, Mediterranean, and Adriatic. They soon became well known far beyond Atlantic City after vacationer Charles Darrow used them in his new board game, Monopoly. Darrow named the most valuable property in his game after Atlantic City's trademark feature, the boardwalk. This boardwalk was the first of its kind in the United States. It was originally built in 1870 to keep sand from blowing into the new hotels. In the beginning, the wooden planks were packed up and stored away every winter. But then the boardwalk itself became a destination. And by the early 20th century, it was the heart of Atlantic City's golden age. Families came from up and down the eastern seaboard to enjoy the boardwalk's thrills and attractions, eat hot dogs and cotton candy, or relax on the beaches it lined. The city's leaders insisted it was all perfectly wholesome. But there was much more to Atlantic City than its family-friendly facade. It was also a major hub of organized crime. For over 30 years, starting in the 1910s, this city was ruled from the 9th floor of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel by an all-powerful politician and mob boss named Nucky Johnson. From his luxurious full-floor suite, Johnson kept a close watch on everything that happened in Atlantic City and is said to have taken a cut on nearly every deal that went down. just like actor Steve Buscemi does in his role as Nucky Thompson on HBO's series Boardwalk Empire, which was inspired by Nucky Johnson. But in the years before World War II, Nucky's empire was for real. As one of his contemporaries later recalled, he ran everything there was to run. Even in Prohibition days, Nucky's bootleggers had the run of the harbor. Brazen rum runners delivered their illegal booze directly into boat garages like the ones under these homes in Gardner's Basin Marina. Legend has it that Nucky's men clambered up inside Atlantic City's larger-than-life-size Lucy the Elephant and signaled to contraband-laden ships offshore with lights hidden in Lucy's eyes. Today, Lucy still looks out over the Atlantic, but the bootleggers are gone. Nucky's days as the city's big shot came to an end when the feds nabbed him for tax evasion in 1941. In the years after World War II, Atlantic City slipped into a long decline. Then, in 1976, a new law legalizing casinos aimed to bring the city's good times back. For a while, it seemed to work. Developers vied to build casinos here. Revenue in the resorts climbed year after year. But in the 1990s, things started to change. More states legalized gambling, and the recent economic recession has hit the city hard. Many casinos have threatened to close. But for many in New Jersey, the booms and busts of Atlantic City seem like they belong to another world. Especially for those on New Jersey's farms, where the riches of the annual harvest seem to never end. Every morning, about 400,000 New Jersey residents step out of their homes in neighborhoods like this one in Hoboken and begin their morning commute to Manhattan. Many head for the Lincoln and Holland tunnels, hoping to survive the morning crush under the Hudson River. But commuters who use the Holland Tunnel today owe their very survival to some pretty important engineering that rises up out of the water above them, on both the New York and New Jersey sides of the river. When it was commissioned, the Holland Tunnel was set to be the longest and widest underwater tunnel for cars in the world. But in order for it to actually work, Chief Engineer Clifford Milburn Holland, for whom the tunnel is named, first had to solve a major problem. He needed to find a way for drivers to get through the tunnels without becoming asphyxiated by exhaust. A member of his team, a Norwegian engineer named Ole Singstad, designed 4 giant ventilation shafts armed with powerful fans to suck the toxic air out of the tunnel. In order to do it, 2 of the towers had to be built right in the middle of the Hudson River. Today, they are architectural landmarks and are capable of replacing all the air inside the Holland Tunnel every 90 seconds. Many drivers don't even get a chance to see these beautifully designed industrial shafts. But those who commute to New York City and back on New Jersey's ferries can't miss them. Every morning and evening, these vessels whisk workers across the river, and when the sky is clear, offer their passengers a stunning view of the island of Manhattan and the shimmering new towers on the New Jersey side that are helping this state compete with its often more celebrated neighbor. Most of these ferries take less than 20 minutes to make the crossing. But there is a place in New Jersey, far to the south, where thousands travel by ferry, but they're not in a mad dash to get to work. They do it just to enjoy the cool breezes and get away. Down off the state's southern border, time slows way down for those aboard the Cape May Lewis Ferry. It carries passengers and vehicles 17 miles from Lewis, Delaware to Cape May on New Jersey's southernmost tip. Cape May is actually an island, separated from the rest of the state by a broad shipping canal. Once, whalers used this spot to launch their ships during colonial days. Later, it became a popular spot for vacationers and is now considered the oldest seaside resort in the United States. Just 3,600 people call this coastal town home during the winter months. But come summer, more than 40,000 people can flock to its beaches on the weekends to share the sun and sand with other flocks of migrating birds. To the west of Cape May, the New Jersey shoreline continues right up into the mouth of the Delaware River. It's a land of marshes, fields, and farms. This is one of the most productive areas of farmland in the state and home of its most famous crop, the New Jersey tomato. Every year, more than 50 million pounds of this fruit is pulled off the vine. In some fields, machines do most of the heavy work and can harvest an entire field in just a few hours. Harvesters only work with special varieties of tomatoes that have tough skin. This bright red fruit is ripe and ready for processing. Their boosters claim that New Jersey tomatoes have a perfect combination of sweetness and acidity. It's a taste that launched one of America's most iconic brands, just to the north in Camden. In 1869, a fruit merchant named Joseph Campbell joined forces with an icebox maker named Abram Anderson to make preserves with tomatoes and other local fruits. Campbell later bought out his partner, and in 1897, a chemist working for the company found a way to make soup without having to ship water in its cans. His new condensed soup was a revolutionary product for consumers across the nation. Campbell's Tomato Soup was born. The company has gone on to be one of the largest food makers in the world, with an annual revenue today of more than $8 billion. Its signature red and white label has been on its cans for over 100 years and was also turned into pricey art when pop artist Andy Warhol made his famous screen paintings of Campbell's soup cans, which now sell for millions. Campbell's helped put the Jersey tomato on the map. And so did one tragic event in 1937, when the world learned of the fiery fate of a legendary airship called the Hindenburg. On May 6, 1937, the largest aircraft in the world flew over Manhattan and paused to give its passengers a glimpse of the city from the air. They were traveling in what was then the Titanic of its day, a giant hydrogen-filled airship called the Hindenburg. Their two-day flight from Germany was just about over and was scheduled to land nearby, here at Lakehurst, New Jersey. At 7 p.m., the airship's pilot, Captain Max Pruss, finally approached the landing site. He edged the airship toward hangar number 1, where the Hindenburg was stored between its flights to and from Europe and Brazil. But as it got closer, the crew noticed the airship's tail was dragging. They tried to correct it, but were unsuccessful. Then, at about 7:25 p.m., flames started shooting from the tail of the Hindenburg. The nose of the airship pointed skyward. Within 30 seconds, it had plummeted to the ground, engulfed by a raging inferno. 1 minute later, there was almost nothing left of the German aircraft but a rigid skeleton of steel. Of the 97 passengers on board, 62 miraculously survived. Many by jumping out of windows as the airship fell. A simple monument at Lakehurst marks the site of the Hindenburg disaster. What caused the fire that brought it down remains a mystery. These days, when many think of New Jersey, they're reminded of a much more recent tragedy that happened here on the Jersey Shore in 2012, when Superstorm Sandy raged up the eastern seaboard and turned entire towns into tinder. New Jersey may have played key roles in America's Revolutionary War and its Industrial Revolution. But in more recent times, the state has been better known for this. 130 miles of stunning Atlantic coastline. It stretches from Sandy Hook in the north to Cape May at New Jersey's southern tip. It was here in Seaside Heights that the Jersey Shore became a household name around the world, thanks to MTV's highest-rated reality series about 8 housemates living in this seaside town. But while many of those stars earned millions and then traveled the world, the real members of this community and others up and down the coast had their own lives upended and their homes destroyed on October 29, 2012, when megastorm Sandy came ashore in New Jersey and raced up the coast. One of the hardest hit towns was this one, Mantoloking, which lies on a barrier island north of Seaside Heights. By October 27th, the eye of Hurricane Sandy was off the Florida coast. At the time, Sandy was actually slowing down and turning into a much less powerful tropical storm. State officials in New Jersey offered residents of Mantoloking the option to evacuate their homes. But then, the storm suddenly turned north and began picking up speed, quickly becoming a Category 1 hurricane. As it raced toward New Jersey, Governor Chris Christie declared a state of emergency and ordered a mandatory evacuation of Mantoloking and other communities on this fragile coast. Everyone had to be out of town by 4 p.m. And those who left were soon happy they had. The next day, the devastation began. Close to 8 p.m. on October 29th, Superstorm Sandy made landfall just north of Atlantic City at Brigantine, and then started battering towns like Seaside Heights and Mantoloking as it raged north. The storm's 80-mile-per-hour winds destroyed or damaged every single one of Mantoloking's 521 houses. A once thriving small New Jersey community was literally torn to shreds. 34 people in the state died from the storm, and millions were left without power. Sandy would be the worst storm system to hit the northeastern United States in 100 years. But today, almost 1 year later, Mantoloking and many other coastal New Jersey towns are rebounding. Residents are finally rebuilding their homes. And the rule now is that those who do have to build higher or pay more. Insurance companies aren't taking any chances, which is why homeowners who put their houses on stilts above future floodwaters will pay less insurance than those who want to step right out onto the beach. Down in Seaside Heights, New Jersey's most famous pier is being rebuilt, and some rides are open again. And its iconic boardwalk is getting new boards. But some people here haven't been able to rebuild at all. Their houses have been condemned and lie in ruins, just as they did after Sandy's terrifying winds finally died down. They offer reminders of just how vulnerable these communities are to rising sea levels and our planet's new, more powerful megastorms. Meanwhile, men, women, and machines are hard at work all along the Jersey Shore. They're pumping sand onto the state's beaches in an effort to help protect the communities that live here as ocean levels rise and the threats of new storms persist into the future. To help these communities bounce back from Hurricane Sandy, New Jersey's local hero, Bruce Springsteen, helped raise more than $23 million. A perfect role for a star who's known as the boss. Springsteen grew up not far from the coast, here in this small white house in Freehold. There's a good reason he wanted to help those affected by Hurricane Sandy. Many of his earliest fans lived right here on the Jersey Shore. That's because since 1974, Springsteen has regularly performed in the coastal town of Asbury Park at this famous corner club called the Stone Pony. He's played here more than 100 times and almost never advertises when he's going to show up, which only endears him more to the locals. New Jersey. It's a state that prides itself on its local heroes and knows how to celebrate its hidden treasures. like its quiet, misty valleys, fields of plenty, and miles of sunlit shore that manage to dazzle just about everyone who's ever set eyes on this Atlantic coast state. It's a place of great natural riches and an innovative spirit that's managed to transform the nation and the world.